Hey guys, welcome back to the former Enlightened Turtle. People are probably wondering why the name's changed on the channel. Well, I'll give you a quick explanation. The Enlightened Turtle got removed off all social medias, except for Instagram, funny enough. Yeah, all my accounts got shut down. Started asking me to send identification and all kinds of stuff, which I did, but they still wouldn't let me have the account. They said the account was dangerous. There was too many duplications and all kinds of mad stuff, so I just kind of got rid of it. And as you might have noticed on the channel as well, YouTube demanded that I delete a large amount of the content on the channel. So unfortunately I had to go through the channel and ended up deleting like 150 videos. So that's why Enlightened Turtle's gone, because it's just becoming too on top, to be honest. But yeah, I've got a little updated video for today. Sorry I haven't been uploading as much. I've been reading a lot of stuff, as well as doing my own book. A couple of these books people have asked me to sign, which I'm going to do. I'll put a little link in the description. It's not really for, to be honest, I'm not really too bothered if nobody purchases it. It was more me trying to experiment on how to do a book, how to publish it and all that kind of stuff for my own book that will be coming down the line at some point this year. Been reading stuff like this, Diodorus Siculus, as well as obviously the Iliad and Imam Wilkins and all these other different books I've been reading. So there's been a lot going on, and I've had a tooth out, so it's been crazy times, to be honest. So yeah, sorry for the lack of content that's been coming through. It will pick up again at some point when I manage to sit down and start bringing all this material together. Like I say, there's a lot of different components. There's a lot of different sections of the theory of this Trojan War in Cambridge, and it's not just English history that you've got to try and understand. It's obviously over into France, which was Argos, you know, the Achaeans up in Belgium, where Achilles was supposed to have come from, as we touched on in previous videos. Right across the Mediterranean, you've got the Etruscans, and how does that tie into it? You've got all the way over in Anatolia, you've got Hallstatt, the connection, another book which I don't have with me. Sorry, just bear with me because I was reading it on the couch. Sorry, I've got stuff all around me. Wasn't really too prepared for this, but there's this book from Waddell. That's W-A-D-D-E-L, L-A Waddell. Now, Marshall, she put me onto that author, and there's some interesting connections that he makes, alluding to a Hittite connection with Great Britain. And there's lots of different moving parts when it comes to that as well, so I'm trying to sift through it. And if you actually look at like the way the book's written, it's quite dense, to be honest. But I am extrapolating information out of there as well. And there's an interesting connection that one of my subscribers, Danielle, she sent me an inbox through my Turtle account before that got shut down, and it was a connection between the Hittites and a city. I can't think of the name of the city now. It began with an E. It wasn't Ebola, but it was something along them lines, you know, like Eb something. It was only like a 4 or 5 letter word. Now, the video she sent me was this lady who had written a book, and she was educated in a couple of universities in America, who specified in Hittite history. Now, she believed that there was an account in the Hittite history and the history that was associated to the area of Hallstatt in Anatolia, just inland from the Dardanelles, that there was an old Assyrian piece of history of a city being destroyed in that area, and she believed it was through the festivals of Apollo, which brought people from all around the area into that location in and around there, where the stories of the Trojan War manifested through this older tale. Which I disagree with that, to be honest. I did say to Danielle I was going to do like a watch along review, because as I was watching it, because there's so much information I've learned, I was picking it apart in my own mind, so it would have been nice to do that, but that's not the focus of today anyway. But like I say, there's Hittite connections to Britain. Obviously you've got there's just loads of information still to come. But the focus of today's video was because, sorry for that long introduction as well by the way, was someone made reference to the Latini and their connection with the Etruscans, and someone who I thought was quite well versed on this topic, to be honest. Perhaps he's not as well versed as I thought he was. He's still a cool dude, and he's still got his own ideas, and I think that his own ideas, and he puts a lot of stuff out there, and it's good, interesting. I engage with him every now and again on this topic because it helps expand my mind, trying to understand further the nuance of all this information. But the Latini, I've wrote this out, so I'm just going to read it because, as you've noticed, when I start freestyling, I'm like Eminem. I just don't stop. I'm spitting bars left and right. But we've got so I put, do you believe this was my response to his question, which I thought I'll share with you guys to see if anyone is aware of any of this information as well. Do you believe that the Latini and the Etruscans are descendants from Brutus or even Aeneas himself? Also, the Franks claim descent from Troy centuries later, which people who probably watch this are aware of. Now, the reason I say that is because he believes that in eastern France there's a river, Lorraine or something like that. He believes that Brutus sailed up this river and he influenced the Latini tribes around 450 BC, and they in turn influenced the Etruscan tribes, which it must have taken a while for that to happen because Brutus wasn't there very long. He went into France. I'm not even sure if he went into that part of France personally. I think he was more over on the western side of France rather than the eastern side, like more the Atlantic rather than the Mediterranean. But he believed that Brutus landed in this area, stayed there, had conflicts with people. So I don't even again know how he had spread influence when he was constantly in conflict with people. It's more through trade and alliances that culture transfers, But anyway, so this was again my response to him. So the origins of the Celts is still rather uncertain. Perhaps they spread outward from Central Europe, as plenty of Celtic objects have been found during excavations at Hallstatt in Austria and Latini in Switzerland. Along with the Atlantic coastal regions, Britain, northern Italy, and even as far as Serbia. Now I put during the Iron Age because it seems like more the mainstream. I was kind of operating in between the lines with this person. It seems more the mainstream over in places like Serbia and that believed the Celtic origins wasn't as strong as maybe the Germanic. They believed that like the Slavs and stuff integrated with like the Indo-Europeans of the Celtic Germanic origin, and then that's how you got like Celtic theology and influence in that area, like as they migrated from the Great Steppes. Which is interesting to me because I know there's archaeological finds that are several thousand years old in and around Serbia, former Yugoslavia, all this part of the world, Romania. And there's one burial site there, I believe it was around 5,000 years old, it's like one of the biggest archaeological finds of a cemetery yielding so much wealth anywhere in Europe, to be honest. I'll try and put some images, obviously as usual, in this video to go along with this, so hopefully you're looking at it right now. So I always wondered if this was a Celtic origin as well, and obviously the term Celt is branded about a lot, and you've got Celt, Gauls, Italio or Italic Celtics, you've got Iberian Celts, you know, there's a lot going on with the term Celt itself. So I don't know if these people were part of this older original Indo-European race that has kind of been forgotten about really, or buried one way or the other. So, you know, I'm going off on tangents again and I apologise. So we've got the Latini people were an evolution of the Hallstatt culture, and from what I can tell via mainstream sources, there's a place here now called I'll put the name of this on the screen because this is one that's very difficult to pronounce. The Salzkammergut region is where there is a village called Hallstatt that has archaeological finds of Bronze Age materials such as cauldrons, horse harnesses, pottery, and I even read somewhere that they're supposedly of Greek origin, though I couldn't verify that. I shall share some of the images to that person as I shall share with you guys. I have of the excavation materials. One cauldron actually looks like it has the Ankh, the Egyptian symbol of life, which it really does. Hopefully, well, I've got the image there, so it will be on the screen for you right now. The culture, Hallstatt, expanded far and wide over many generations that came after the urn culture. Urn as in like urns that you put ashes in or burial remains. Oh, sorry, lost myself. Which was also linked to this area in question. Again, I have the images to show you. The other theory is that of an expansion from the Atlantic regions from the west to the east, which is far more fitting for me in some respects, as the settlements in the western places were already well established long before the Iron Age, which they clearly were, whether you go from the Neolithic to the Mesolithic to the Bronze Age before the Iron Age and the Copper Age. You know, there's a wealth of archaeology to be found, whether you're talking the Orkney Isles, down right through the British Isles, Ireland, the Scilly Isles, down into western Portugal regions and western France, down to the Canary Isles, even in North Africa, as you shall see in a moment. I have seen somewhere that there's Celtic evidence that can be found in Denmark as early as 1500 BCE. I'm not sure if that was the famous silver cauldron, which I'll put a photograph of that up as well, it's impressive. And obviously the Guanches found in the Canary Isles, as well as the descendants of the Neolithic cultures of the British Isles, as I just touched on. The time frame of this urn culture fits like a glove with the cultural compatibility and DNA between northwestern Europe and northern Italy and southeast England, and an invasion force into the southeastern part of England around 3,000 years ago, as I and others have theorised by some, like mainly Imman is the main source of this material I've been coming across. There's other people who've got the same theory, but his work is thorough. He's put his lifetime into this work. A Trojan War taking place in East Anglia, in Cambridgeshire, around that region, out to the Wash, where all the ships were encamped. I presented to one person, I won't mention his name, in our last discussion regarding the Trojan War. The influx of DNA from this culture came into this part of Britain in significant quantities around 3,000 years ago. Again, so all this information is going to be in my book in more detail when it finally gets round, and I'll do more videos, but I can't break everything down because the videos will be too long. But there was a culture that expanded. Well, let's put it this way, they done genealogy and testing on. They originally had around about 16 test subjects, bones, bone fragments, graves, burials, this kind of thing, organic matter. that they were able to extrapolate DNA from, and it wasn't as clear as what some people wanted. So a few years back, they actually done this test again, and they had a lot more subjects, a lot more material to do the testing with. I think around about 300 and something test objects that they were able to use rather than just a dozen or so. Now, what they found was that around 3,000 years ago, approximately, some 3,200 years ago, some 2,900 years ago, but this is the ballpark of this alleged Trojan War. Some people have gone as far back as 3,200 years, some 3,100, some 3,000. You know, there's a bit of nuance that needs to be interpreted here, along with all archaeology really, because the chronology is all over the place. There's different interconnecting things, but I'm going off again, sorry. So yeah, they took all these test subjects, and what they found when they done the DNA testing was that there was a large influx of what we'd call early agricultural Europeans. I think it's like EEA or something like that, the acronym was. Now, of these subjects, they found that it was predominantly the area of France, which is what Iman Wilkins, as I said, and a few others would state was Argos, which was the area of Agamemnon and his kingdom, where he offered like 6 or 7 cities to Achilles if he came back and during the war and helped him win. And then there was like 3 other or 4 other countries or modern day countries associated going along. So you had like Belgium, I think maybe Denmark, and then there was one further to the south. I think it might have been Spain. So right there you've got this influx of this DNA, and the interesting thing was it was only in the southeast of England, which is the area where the Trojan War was theorised, postulated, hypothesised, whatever, to have taken place. Now, my mind was like, well, that's interesting, and it does explain a quote that you get from one of the people who wrote about the war, which was Homer, I believe. I can't remember now. The 3 books that I've got, as I say, Dictys and Dickates. I'd done my own book just because I wanted to learn the information more, and there wasn't that many books out there about it, and I thought I'm going to do my own. And the Achaeans and the Danans, whichever way you want to call them, they all said and agreed that, you know, they want to lie with the Trojan women. I believe it might have been one of the kings. It wasn't like Odysseus, but it was one of the kings who was like, he gave a rallying cry to the troops on one of the occasions when the morale was down, and it was like, we're not leaving until we have conquered Troy and slept with the wives of the Trojan men. So right there I was like, well, that'd explain why you've got this Y DNA coming in, because the males have probably slept with all the wives and captured women of the Trojans, the ones they didn't carry off back to Argos or down south to Ithaca and all these other locations. They would have remained, and probably half of them probably would have been pregnant and things like this. So that's where you get this influx of that DNA coming in at that time, which the time is, like I say, it's very interesting. But again, I keep going off on tangents. The Latini culture is later than the, sorry, what's the name of that culture again? I keep going to say Hittites, the Hallstatt. So the Latini culture is later than the Hallstatt, but of the same stock as the Hallstatt people, which also expanded into northern Italy 2,500 to 3,000 years ago. The culture has always been Celtic in this area. This was Western Europe now, and Etruria in northern Italy. This culture has always been Celtic in the area, judging by the DNA and language, though genetically and dialectically, I think I invented a word there, different from that found, say, in Wales or Ireland. So again, we're getting a different Celtic culture. And that's genetically and phonetically, by the way. There's different runic systems, language systems, and all that kind of stuff. And the genetics is different to Western Europe. Well, should I say the Atlantic coastal regions. The Greek historian Ephorus described Celtic greatness as far as Morocco in his 5th century work, Universal History. So this is the Berber tribes and people like that. As I have mentioned before in the group, sorry, go on, I'll just say it as it is. Because obviously I got removed from Britain's Hidden History, which was a group I was very much like active in and part of when Ross was around. But obviously Ross passed away. I had a disagreement with someone on another group who turned out to be the guy who taken over the group. So he had it in for me from day one. Just got rid of me in the dead of the night. Random stuff. But I'll say it as it is. I have mentioned before in the group, maybe as Enlightened Turtle in the other group, I believe they were all connected. This was all the Celts, by the way. As the language is very similar and with differing forms of runic systems. The Celts seemed more like giant tribes rather than kingdoms or empires, as found in Mesopotamia, for example, but had cultural law, a common way of life, with local rulers that were influenced in their different areas due to differing migrations and wars, etc. Because obviously the Celtic Indo-European area is vast. The area of Marseille, for example, in France, had Greek settlers from around 600 BCE, with the language remaining for a period after the Roman conquest of the area. So there seems to be a constant ebb and flow of migrations through conquest, trade, expatriates, and exploration. The area of Brittany today was believed to be an ally of Priam, given that he offered double the tribute to that of Agamemnon of Argos. And the areas inland, Argos, should I say, home of the Danans, had the same culture also as the Achaeans to the north, as the Trojans did, according to Homer, in that book right there. Obviously, they all had the same gods and things like that. Obviously, Apollo was believed to have come from an island out in the west. Some people theorised that he was the principal god of Britain, or he was birthed in Britain even, but we'll come on to that another time. It would make sense, at least to me, that someone like Brutus would have similar cultural elements, as if, as stated above, is correct, then these people were before his time already like-minded, that is, linguistically, religiously, culturally, and philosophically. It would make sense, at least to me, that someone like Brutus would have a similar cultural element. And I digress on that notion because, like I say, I was trying to navigate in between mainstream, non-mainstream. Didn't want to come at it from strange angles. So in closing, I see this culture already existing, say, before 450 BCE, as per the archaeology and the other prevailing notions of an interconnected culture expanding into new areas as farms became settlements and settlements became villages, so on and so forth, with trade and increasing leadership attracting people looking for things like food, shelter, and all the way to like unemployment and all that jazz. Again, as always, I will say none of this is fact, as all anyone has on these topics are theories, though this is an area I have more digging in to do for my new book. Little promotion again, sorry. So perhaps I can raise this topic again in the future and provide greater context. I will say it is getting harder to find some of these older materials and images of the archaeological digs. I will, however, share a few images to go with what I said. So that's the end of my comment, and like I say, it's the comment's pretty lineal, but the concepts behind the words that I'm using are pretty vast. And there's so many things that, like I say, you've got to touch on and delve into and connect. And if you have a look at some of these images that I've just shared, sorry, just had to go and let the cat in. So if you take a look at some of these images on the screen of the two different digs, one of the digs was found with swords, bridle pieces for horses, spearheads, axes and all that kind of stuff. That was found in East Anglia in England, all this Bronze Age weaponry from the Bronze Age. And then you've got the Hallstatt archaeological dig, where you've got what looks like the same weaponry to me. You've got the same type of swords, and these are swords that, in my mind, when I watched like the Trojan movie growing up, or you know, the Immortals, or any of these Greek movies, they look like Greek swords. They look like Greek weaponry. So who knows, maybe there was this transference of all this knowledge from a Celtic origin to a Greek origin, as there's different notions, as I mentioned in the last video, or it might have been one of the ones before that, where a lot of people believe that like the Achaeans and that became the Greeks, where there's a conflation of the word Achaean and Greek. And obviously the Achaeans, if they were in the Eastern Mediterranean, around the Aegean, they would have came from like Crete and Minos and places like that, and would have been the Mycenaean peoples, but the L couldn't get that word out there. And apparently the Mycenaean people expanded out into be this Greek culture. Well, who knows? Like I say, none of this is factual on my end, as I'm still learning, I'm still growing, trying to understand this information more intimately and develop my own thoughts. But I thought I'd share that with you guys, because some of the visuals are quite interesting that go with this, and I hope I didn't lose you all too much. Like I say, there will be more content coming. I haven't stopped making content. I've just put it on the back burner while I'm doing a lot more studying. So thanks everyone for sticking around, staying tuned, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.